to prepone the emission standards. Remember, it was the Mashelkar Committee of 2002 that had laid down the roadmap for implementation of the Bharat Stage Norms till 2010, and thereafter the committee had formed a 13-member panel under Planning Commission member Saumitra Chaudhuri for the period thereafter. And this evening, we're delighted to be joined by Mr. Chaudhuri himself. Sir, thank you very much for joining us here on The Big Picture. The auto industry has been following the timeline that your committee had come up with all this while, and clearly they're not happy with the government's efforts to sort of prepone the implementation, first from 2024 to 2021, and now to just completely do away with Bharat Stage 5 and to go straight to Bharat Stage 6 by 2020. And they say this has put their investment, the investment that they had lined up, completely off gear. Do you think their concerns, sir, are legitimate?
I think let's separate this in two parts. One is a refinery issue. The problem was, how do we produce enough BS4 in the first stage to have all India BS4, and second, how do we get to BS5? Remember, while there's a BS6 on emission standards, the BS5 fuel and what could be the Euro 6 fuel barely is hardly any difference. So if you can get to 10 ppm sulfur, which is BS5, then the BS6 transition, it's very, very small. It can easily be done.
Right.
So the availability of BS5 fuel by 2019-20 would enable you to move to BS6 emissions directly. Yes, it can. The question is the cost and economics of this whole thing. And I think there is an issue of adaptation of technology which is proven in Europe, and they've had a several-year transition from Euro 5 to Euro 6 engines. They have to be tried out. It can't be just done in the laboratory. It has to be tried out. You have to see how quickly these engines depreciate, but they are the technical guys. I think certainly it will be a big challenge for them. Their submission always was that we need 4 years to transit from one regime to the other regime. We can't really cut it finer. But they're now going to be asked to move from stage 4 to stage 6 in a matter of 2 years. It's certainly going to be taxing for them. But I think they are the best advocates for their own position. I really cannot add to or subtract from what they've said. But the fuel side should not be a problem if the timelines that the committee had set up are adhered to.
Right. Fair enough, sir. In fact, this also begs the question about the viability of this, of this announcement by the government today, because BS4, first time it was implemented back in 2010. Even now, it's largely prevalent in the northern, in the northern belt. Large part of the country still do not have BS4 fuel. So in terms of purely the viability issue, I mean, how viable is it that fuel will be available for BS6 across the country by April 2020, sir? Because you've held, deliberations and discussions with many of the stakeholders from the oil marketing companies as well.
No, that's what I'm saying. The oil side, there should not be a problem. We said all BS4 sufficient to meet all of North and Western India by 2015 actually, and then 2016 rest of the parts of South India, and 2017 all over. 2019, 2020 do all of BS5. Whatever refinery production cannot be graded to BS5, which is BS5/6, the fuel is the same, would have to be exported. I think if the timelines are adhered to, there was a large investment cost over 80,000 crores, of which about, I think about half of it was on account of transiting to BS4, and the other half on account of BS5. I think they've already been committed and approved and is underway. So as I said, the timelines are maintained on the refinery side. The production and availability of fuel to meet either BS5 or BS6 in 2020 should not be a constraint. But on the manufacturing of the automobiles and the trucks, etc., I think that's a different ball game, and that I think I really do not have too much of a competence to comment upon. But as the automobile guys should really be able to explain their position much better.
They're clearly worried, sir, as you might have heard my colleague filing that story. But in fact, sir, in your report, which you also mentioned just now, that the overall investments for oil marketing companies was estimated to be in the tune of 80,000 crore rupees. But today in the government announcement said that the refineries would have to invest 30,000 crore rupees. So is there, because many are also concerned that perhaps there is an underestimation of the investments that would be required on part of the OMCs. Any comment on that, sir?
I don't think so. I think that 80,000 was composed of roughly, I think 50,000 or 55,000 for stage 4 and another 30,000 or 35,000 for stage 5. So what the government might be talking about is the stage 5 investments. But to the best of my knowledge, they've already been committed and approved, and they are underway. Otherwise, you won't get BS5 in 2019 or 2020. It takes 3 to 4 years to actually implement these projects. So I think on the refinery side, there's a less of a problem. Unless people have actually not got those approvals and not done those investments, then those will be fresh. But if they have, as they had committed to at that time, then there shouldn't be a problem. But on the automobile side, I can see that there could be difficulties. But then there's still some time. But now it's 2016. We've got about 4 years to go. And maybe in 4 years' time, those issues can be overcome at a cost. It will cost more, especially diesel vehicles. BS6 will cost much more than BS4 and also BS5. Gasoline vehicles may not cost incrementally that much, but there is an element of cost.
Absolutely, sir. How do you look at the fact that the onus also now lies big time with the two-wheeler manufacturers? Because I think in your report you had given them, I think, 2 additional years. But in this case, the government wants even the two-wheelers to adhere to BS6 norms by 2020. How big a sort of a decision do you think that will be?
I think that's going to be a tough decision because scooters so far, you need catalytic converters to be able to meet this 4, 5, and 6 standards. And two-wheelers did not have catalytic converters because they were till recently they were only meeting 3 standards. Though there are technologies available, there are manufacturers in place. There are 3 manufacturers in India making catalytic converters which can be made, which can be adapted for two-wheelers. One guy is actually only making it mostly for two-wheelers. So we have the infrastructure. They're all export-oriented because there isn't enough domestic demand. So there is enough infrastructure to meet the requirements. But these are all price-sensitive issues. So when you get to two-wheelers, an additional cost of, let's say, even 4,000 or 5,000 rupees or 3,000 rupees might make it tough. So I think there's a lot of sensitivity on these issues. Maintenance is a problem. So I think that two-wheelers will have a tougher transition period than cars, which had a long experience with going to BS4. They've had bringing BS4 to catalytic converter vehicles for a very long time. So for them it's easier. Truck manufacturers have also not really gone into that catalytic converter route. They have to use what are called DSCR scrubbers to be able to beat those standards. It's new stuff, but I think they are rather large companies that can adapt. Two-wheelers, because of the cost per unit issue and sensitivity on that price segment, is going to be tough for them. Whereas they have to do it because, as you might know, they're under BS3, hydrocarbons and the polluters, the nitrogen oxides and hydrocarbons, which are emitted by one two-wheeler is almost the same, and in some cases more than that is permitted for a car for driving 1 kilometer.
Absolutely, sir.
So, the disproportionate impact is very high.
Yes. In fact, in Delhi also, clearly, in fact, if the transport sector contributes 20% or so to overall pollution, two-wheelers are clearly, in terms of overall quantum, their pollution contribution is a lot higher, in fact, than the passenger vehicle manufacturers. But thank you so very much, Mr. Saumitra Chaudhari, for joining us here on The Big Picture. That was Mr. Chaudhari in conversation with me. He headed a committee between 2010 and 2012 that came out with recommendations in May 2014 in terms of the roadmap for implementation of high emission standards for the Indian automobile sector. Time to slip in